Hey, what's up everyone? This is the video, man. This is the video y'all asked for. And here it is. It's about time I got this video out here. Let's take a look. Alright, so this is the video. I really didn't know I was ever going to do this video. This is the one that everyone kept on asking me for when I let out other videos on the hybrid hunter. And everyone was like, hey, let me see them all. Let me see the colors. Let me hear you talk about it. Let me hear you, all the different things that I know about the hybrid hunter y'all wanted to know. And I just thought, man, if I just throw all these big fish catches, it would be enough. But this is the more informative, depthful. Let's look at the bait. Let's look at all the colors. Let's look at what we're coming out for. And this is before any of them have ever come out, guys. So this is still, I think it's getting close, man. I know even some guys have made some pre-orders on some. So let's take a look at them right now. There's the first color, oyster. There you go. There's green gizzard, chartreuse perch. There's delta red. All right, guys. This is if you haven't ever seen this color, yeah, that's because it's called smooth. It was one I designed years ago. So we brought that one back with us, kept it in the lineup. This was also a pre-existing color of an older one called sweet shad. Got your muddy Oklahoma guys, black and chartreuse. Got your black, gold, and orange belly. Got your blue crawl. Got one of the new colors out there, bully. This is on a lot of their new crankbaits, new Strike Kings crankbaits. Got the typical, good old, standard, catches them everywhere you go, blue chrome. I'm not even gonna talk about this one. I don't really want to, because look at it, it's just too pretty. Clearwater minnow. And guys, here's a look at all the small ones too. So this is a smaller version of them. I gotta be honest with you guys, I don't know exactly. I don't think they're making as many colors in the small ones, but I still have most of the colors here. This bait is so different, and here's why. And if you keep on hearing it, there's one of the reasons why. When I got this bait years and years and years ago, I didn't really understand it. Luckily, the first time I even threw it, it didn't even make a lot of sense to me, and I was like, oh, it kind of looks cool, but it was just nothing like I'd ever seen before. And I was just so ready for a crankbait. It's got a bill, right? So you see a bill on it, you're like, it's crankbait. And I threw it out there, and I could kind of see it a little bit. It was really clear water, and I could kind of see it, and I was reeling it real slow, and it was just kind of coming back to me. And so I didn't throw it for a while. Well, luckily, I went out to Rayburn, and I went with the buddies, and we were going to try out a whole bunch of different baits that I had that I'd never even fished before. And I'll do a series on one of these days. I'm gonna go in there in this garage. I'm gonna pull out all these baits that probably none of y'all have ever seen before. And I'm gonna do that one time and talk about it. But this was one of the baits, and so I decided to throw it. And some guys were throwing like some rattle traps and red eyes around me in the boat with me, and I ended up just crushing these guys. And so luckily, the first day I went out there happened to be a decent day where I had to, got to figure some stuff out. Here's what I figured out, guys. It's just different. It's different, and fish have never seen this before. And that's a big deal. Just like when the chatterbait came out, and all these, in the whopper plopper, it's close, but it's just so much different that like fish just go crazy over it. Now, the cool thing about this is I have been throwing this for that many years, and it's kind of stayed the test of time, right? It's actually kept on producing even 10 years later. A lot of those baits that come out new, they work for a year or two and then they're not that good. This bait has been continually working for me, and sometimes even gets better for me. Like I kind of figure out more about it. This bait isn't just for grass, although I've done some grass videos, guys. And the reason I do the grass videos is because I live around lakes with grass. I mean, it's just part of it. But I've made some cuts and some opens and some coastas and stuff, and a lot of team tournaments on these lakes that have zero grass. I mean, there is not a stitch of grass in this lake. Places like Table Rock, places like Texoma, Lake of the Ozarks, Grand Lake, I've caught them. I mean, I've caught them a lot of places without rock. What I've had to do is I just don't try to use it as a crankbait all the time. Like, you have to kind of figure out the lake you're on, and it's really just fishing, guys. It's really just figuring out, like, okay, they're not that deep, so I can throw something like this. They're not that, they're kind of over big flats, really shallow bars. This bait excels on it really well because as it's moving along, it covers water almost better than any other bait. It kind of covers water like a red-eye shad, a rattle trap, a rattling bait, something like that. And the reason is when you throw a bait like that out there, you're staying in a 2 to 4 foot range. And if the water's 3 foot of water, you know, depth, when you're throwing it out there, a crankbait sometimes digs and kind of messes up, and kind of, it's hard to get a crankbait to like constantly dig on the bottom and you're just grinding it, and it's getting hung up on things. A lot of times those bars and stuff, they grow a little bit of algae and stuff on it, so you're always just picking stuff out of there. So sometimes it's not that great. Well, this kind of stays above it, and you can kind of work above it, and it's not always grinding in there. It might touch it, but it's not grinding in there. So that's what's cool, really cool about this bait. I'm gonna show you some underwater video of this bait and what I'm kind of talking about. But when you reel this bait, like most crankbaits, okay, and this is important. Most crankbaits run like this, okay? And what I mean by that is with that bill, they want to dive. They always want to go down like this. Every time you pull them, they instantly go down, right? Instantly go down. This thing barely tilts, about like that. I mean, just barely. And what happens is, as you're moving it through the water with this unique lip, instead of diving down, it kind of just goes down. You see someone going down the stair, like a fake stairs, you know, behind a couch, and they just keep, their head just keeps going down as they go, you know, go under. That's kind of what this bait does, right? It just kind of slowly goes down like this. So it keeps a very horizontal look to it, okay? So it's not always just digging in the ground. It might touch it, you know, as it gets down here and it touches it. Now when it touches it, that's the part where this thing is so crazy and hunts that when it touches things, it veers off and it deflects and it does all these different things. That's kind of what's unique about it. And the reason it's like that is because if you look at this, okay, it's a flat-sided crankbait, okay? That's important. If you look at almost every other crankbait that's not flat-sided, obviously they're all rounded. And the reason a lot of times they do that is because they're kind of more aerodynamic. They kind of go in the water better, and they're not trying to get a certain action. They're trying to get a wobble to it, right? It's more like this, and it's going down, and that's what the look you're trying to get for it. A flat-sided crankbait's different. You're trying to get a roll, okay? The other ones try to do this, okay? You're trying to get a roll on a flat-sided crankbait. And what that does is, and I'll show you, what that does is it creates a lot of flash. That's important. Anyone that's ever thrown a rattle style bait, right? Rattle trap, red eye, you name it. That's what you're trying to get, right? You're trying to get that motion right there. Okay? Rattle trap, red eye, all those things are flat-sided. So color becomes important in these baits, and it's not so much the color. Sometimes it's the scheme of the entire color, but if you notice, almost all of our colors, they change right here, and it's important. You know, a lot of our colors do that, regardless of whether it's this one, they all have a color change, and it's usually right here and right there, okay? And the reason that is if you put this in the water and you start to do this, what happens is the color of this bait turns more, it takes this chrome and blue and black, and it combines all those colors. And so what you see is real fast, okay, underwater you'll see it, okay, and you'll see that you get more of a hue of a color. What I mean by a hue is, like this bait, that chartreuse yellow right there, and that dark, and just that little bit of orange, that orange will stick out probably more than any of the other colors. You'll see that orange because it gets combined and meshes with all those other colors, and you'll see it a bunch. So even just a small little color like that, you'll see the hue of it as it's going through the water. So a lot of these times, man, a color you kind of visualize looking at the bait won't really look like that in the water when it starts to turn like that. So keep that in mind. We use a lot of different colors. If you look, it's not necessarily all crankbait colors. What you have is a lot of, you know, jerkbait colors. Okay, same thing with the jerkbait though. A lot of jerkbaits are semi-flat sided, and you're getting them to dart and jerk and stuff, so it combines all those colors when they do that. So we have quite a bit of jerkbait colors. We have also quite a bit of flashy colors, okay? And the reason that is that's kind of more of the red eye, you know, that's more of the red eye colors, you know. So, and then we have our standard crankbait colors, you know what I'm saying? We have a lot of crankbaits that look like crawfish, you know. We have the ones that, you know, we get for the dirty water. We've got shad colors, you know, some of these whites, and when I say whites, like the sexy shad, white and greens and stuff, we don't really have those. And I'll be honest with you, we've tried them. I'm not saying they won't catch fish, but there's a reason we picked some of these colors. I mean, that's a really off-white. This is a fairly big crankbait, okay? And if you put on the sides of one of these crankbaits a color like a white that is so bright, it becomes a little too gaudy, and it really doesn't look good. And you can see like the pinkish hues in here, and it's an off-white. That on purpose. Like even this one, it's got a lot of white in there, but we broke it up. And when you bring this out, this color, this gray in this crankbait, and like I said, I made that gray go down way far in the white on purpose because it broke up a lot of that white. So it looks pretty bright, but in the water it starts to take on this other color, this grayish. It's a grayish bluish. It's a really unique color that we made. That color becomes a huge factor in where this works, because I mean, one color on one lake might not ever catch a fish, I'll be honest, you know. But then there's other colors that you're like, oh my gosh, I went from catching none or one to catching 30 on this one. Like, it'll be that big of a difference. So pay attention to your colors, try to match. I mean, it's still standard, right? The clearer it is, you know, you don't want that bright bait all the time. Same thing, like we made those chartreuses and those brighter colors for a little bit stained water, you know. Anytime you're a lot of times in the South, they're not dirty, but they're just not that crystal clear you get like at a Beaver Lake or a Table Rock, you know, where you can see 10-12 foot. So keep that in mind, how loud it is. There's 2 ball bearings in there, here and here, okay? And I mean, they are loud. The chambers on this thing is incredibly loud. So what's really cool about this is this will be, if you want to call it a crankbait, the loudest crankbait you will ever hear. Guaranteed. I'll put money on it. I mean, this thing is super loud. So now, of all the other crankbaits out there, this is the loudest one. So you already got that. That's something different, something unique, something the fish aren't used to seeing. A bait that semi looks like a crankbait diving down there, that's not a rattling bait, that is this loud. Buoyancy, okay? If you look at it, it's a flat-sided crankbait, okay, that's still very fat, okay? It's still very fat across the edge right here. So it's still a pretty big crankbait, which means you can get a lot of air in there. There's nothing else in this bait, okay? So this is super, super buoyant. There's a reason we wanted it so buoyant. You can't get a bait too buoyant, because sometimes what happens is it doesn't work right through the water. And there has to be a perfect amount of weight and buoyancy to make a bait still hunt, okay? This thing still does that. If you don't combine all three of those things and still make the line tie and everything, there's a way to do all this if you make this crankbait too perfect, okay? And what I mean by that is if you try to design this thing and you didn't put all those factors into place and you just made it look like this, doesn't mean it's going to work like this. It's almost like cooking, you know? I know I'm talking about cooking on a bass fishing deal. And so, but you have to put in the right amount of ingredients or certain things aren't gonna work right. So you just can't look at something and design it. You have to really be aware of how much weight and how much buoyancy and where the line tie is. And the more perfect you make this bait, the more it just kind of comes through the water like this. And it doesn't really do anything that you want it to do. I want this bait to go like this and flash, and when it hits something, take off. A lot of times if you jerk on a crankbait that's really good, all it does is do this, okay? So you're going along and you stop it and then you jerk it and it just comes to you. I don't want that. What I want is when I stop it, it's going through and I stop it and I jerk it, it takes off. It takes off one way or the other. I don't care which way, but I want it to dart and do different things. That's when you get bites. That's why right after you do those movements, you know, a crankbait is usually good when it hits something off the bottom, right? Because you can't make a lot of those crankbaits dart and do different things. The only way you can do that is by cranking a crankbait on the bottom and deflecting off the bottom. I want to be able to do that without deflecting off the bottom. I want it to deflect off the bottom and go crazy, but I want to be able to do this without having to do that. So that's important about this bait. Fairly big bait, it's fairly heavy. So, and when I say heavy, guys, it's not like some 2-ounce bait. It's just, you can get a hold of this thing. I mean, you can launch this thing. It's why we throw it on 20-pound test line. This isn't a finesse type little crankbait where you're gonna go out there and have like, it's like not like a 1.5. You can put it on a bigger rod, and you can put it on bigger line, and you can put some 2-aught owner hooks on there. I mean, those are those O-wire hooks. So I'm using bigger stuff. This thing catches really, really big fish, really big ones. I guarantee you, when you start using this, there will be times when you're like, man, I've caught bigger ones on this bait than, say, you know, even a thunder cricket, a crankbait, a red eye, things that you're used to throwing all those baits up, because that's kind of where you throw this bait. You kind of throw it where you swim jig. You throw it where you throw a thunder cricket. You throw it where you throw a red eye. You throw it where you throw a wake bait. Okay, yeah, I said a wake bait, a spinner bait. You know, you're looking for that 5 foot of water or less. And guys, do not, I promise you, please, whatever y'all do not pigeonhole this bait, okay? Do not be afraid to throw it around pad stems. Do not be afraid to throw it where you can see things under the water and you're like, no, I mean, I'm gonna get hung up. Just try it. Just try it in places you wouldn't expect to throw it. You're gonna come across some things that like it doesn't work in, right? Like you can't just throw it in just like hay grass or something, but mess with it. A lot of times you'll see me with my rod up. I'm trying to only work it in 2 foot of water as opposed to 4 or 5. Sometimes I have my rod tipped down. I'm trying to make this bait go where I have some type of cover, whether it's the bottom, the fish are at, vegetation, trees. I'm trying to come right, just almost right over that, you know, and if it touches it, fine. That's why we made it so buoyant. And don't rip it. When you get hung up, you can feel it coming up to something. Give it slack. Give your rod, throw your rod tip towards it. Kind of pop it like you would if you were hung up. Don't rip it. All it's gonna do is make it worse. Let the bait do the work. If you give it some slack and it starts floating up, you're letting it do the work. That's when they're gonna eat it. That bait's designed for this. If you ever see me rip it, it's because I'm already through the cover. I can feel that the bait has something, a piece of grass, something hung on it. That's when I rip it. I'm trying to rip the grass off of it. I'm not trying to rip it through the grass. Ripping it through the grass with a bill like that's just gonna make it dig more into it. Go back and watch some of those videos where I fish it. You'll kind of see me how I work it. Pay attention to those things. I mean, that's going to help you out. It works really good fast. Okay, speed is your friend with this bait. So I'm usually trying to throw this thing fast. You can throw this thing faster than normal crankbaits, red eyes, all that stuff, because there's not this pull on it. Okay, and what I mean, there's not this like hard pull that's that you're working against it. That bill allows it. It's just kind of barely going through the water, so there's not a whole bunch of, you can feel, you know, your rod, you know, in the tip, you can feel it, the vibration and everything, but you're not having to work really hard. It's not hard to do it. It's not hard. It's not like a 10XD where you're having to grind through it, or even it's really smooth going through the water with a lot of vibration. So you can work this thing really fast, is why I throw it on a 7-to-1 reel. You can work it slow, but for me, working it slow is like fast and slow. It's like reel, hit something and stop, you know, and letting it float up. I mean, it might take a second and a half for it to float out of what you're trying to do or popping it, and all that time they're sitting there still watching it. So slow doesn't mean I'm trying to crank it real slow. It just means I'm working it fast and slow at the same time. Kind of like, envision a jerkbait, right? When you pop a jerkbait, that's a fast jerk, but you're letting it pause. Kind of like this, you're working it fast for little short bits of time, but it's still taking a long time to reel it in. It's still going semi-slow. It's not covering a bunch of water when you're doing that, but you're working it fast in little short pauses and bursts and popping it. That's kind of what I say when I'm working it slow. I rarely just get down there and just creep it. Like I said, most of the time you're gonna work it slow because it's the winter time and it's really cold. It's like a jerkbait. It's still going fast for a little short burst, but you're letting it pause there. I'm gonna show you this. We got a bunch of different colors. These aren't even all of them, right? I mean, we made all these different colors and tried them out. They're not all going to be in the lineup. Obviously, we had to pick. I might talk about the small ones in another video. They should be coming out hopefully in October. I looked on Tackle Warehouse. They're already up for pre-order. I think 10 colors. So check those out. I'm sure you can pre-order some at Strike King. Guys, I hope this clears up everything on the Hybrid Hunter. Don't be fooled, guys. This was the original mold from years and years. I mean, like, guys, 40 years ago. Like, this is the original mold that no one ever knew about. So we didn't change anything. This is it. Like, it is the same thing. So, and since we have started this, I have not thrown any of my old ones. I have thrown nothing but the new ones. So even all my old videos over the past 6 to 9 months are all videos of me throwing this, the newer ones, you know. Anyways, check it out. Let me know what y'all guys think. See y'all.